Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're going to do things a little differently. I'm stepping out of my usual role to speak directly to you as a survivor. A fellow villager who was actually there on the day the very grammar of our existence was literally unmade. We're going to walk through this dark, gothic nightmare together, analyzing Baron von Nichts and the absolutely horrifying philosophy that brought our entire world to its knees.
It all started in the absolute dead of night, the freezing depths of the witching hour. It was 3 a.m., but you have to understand, the clock in the bell tower of Weimar didn't just strike the hour, it bled it. The air in our valley grew so incredibly thick, practically suffocating us with this bitter, awful scent of vinegar and old parchment. And up there, high above us, standing totally alone on the jagged, frostbitten crown of the Brocken Mountain, was the Baron, Baron von Nichts. He was standing there in this pristine Prussian coat, buttoned tight against a supernatural wind that, well, it carried absolutely no warmth. None.
Now, he didn't bow to the heavens, nothing like that. Instead, he raised this massive iron staff and recited his cosmic creed with this trembling, just terrible awe. He declared, "The first word was light, and it was a mistranslation." Think about that. He went on to say that existence itself is a fever, that consciousness is just the delirium. He actually argued that to create anything at all is a literal crime against the pure peace of the void. He demanded that the sunrise be denied, invoking this terrifying concept he called the Great Zero to just consume everything. And then, the sky answered him. The heavens just ripped wide open to reveal the ultimate symbol of absolute negation, the Great Star. It was massive, it was completely motionless, and it burned with this freezing, dark anti-light. It's hard to even describe, but it was so profoundly unnatural that it actually cast black shadows upward into the heavens rather than down upon the earth.
And from the cold light of that star, something started to form. This oily, heavy, silver quicksilver literally began to ooze straight out of thin air. We watched, absolutely paralyzed with horror, as it pooled on the granite and then twisted upward into a humanoid shape. It solidified into these coarse, ash-gray priest robes, topped with a rigid black leather plague doctor's mask. Its glass eyes reflected that dead star above, and its long beak curved like a sickle. This was the mercurial spirit of negation, a creature whose very breath brought nothing but absolute decay.
And the moment this grand architect of decay took its very first breath, the earth itself reacted. The actual skin of the mountain wrinkled and peeled away, just like burnt paper. The moss instantly died. Solid rocks turned into this fine, gray ash right before our eyes. We call this the first sloughing. It was the sudden, terrifying shedding of all of nature's illusions, signaling that the age of nihilistic negation had definitively arrived.
Which brings us to the parable of the broken scale. Let's look at how this nightmare actually unfolded as the Baron and his gray spirit descended from that dead mountain, making their way down into our valley marketplace. Because by dawn, the fog had rolled in, and they were walking among us.
Let me set the scene for you so you can really picture it. It was a completely typical morning market. Right in the center of our square stood our wealthiest merchant, and he was using this massive, beautifully crafted golden balance scale to weigh out green, bread, silver, all of it. He was proudly shouting out to the crowd that his scales were perfectly fair, that God himself watched the balance, and that every single man received exactly what his labor was worth. And we all cheered. We were so deeply comforted by the order of the market, the justice of the scale, our comforting traditional ideas of value.
In this moment, it perfectly captures the clash between two totally irreconcilable worldviews. On one side, you have our constructed metrics of the soul, right? The merchant's truth, built on order, divine justice, the meaning of fair labor. But on the other side, you have the Baron's void, a worldview of sheer, unfeeling nihilism governed by absolutely nothing but indifferent gravity and the Great Zero. So when the Baron stepped forward, his heavy cloak snapping in the wind, let me tell you, the entire crowd fell dead silent.
The mercurial spirit was looming right behind him, casting this terrifyingly long shadow across that gleaming golden scale. The Baron looked dead at the merchant, his voice just cutting right through the morning mist, and he asked one chilling question. "Tell me, merchant, what is the weight of the scale itself?" The merchant kind of laughed nervously, saying, well, the scale doesn't weigh itself, it's the tool of absolute truth. But the Baron just stepped closer, and he dismantled our entire foundation with this morbid, completely undeniable logic. He argued that our so-called tools of justice are really just chunks of metal. They're forged by hands that will soon rot. He looked right at the merchant and said, If you severed your own hand and placed it on the pan opposite your silver, the scale would simply tilt toward the meat, right? The scale is completely blind to God, it's blind to greed, it's blind to morality, it only obeys gravity. It knows absolutely nothing of the divine justice that we so desperately projected onto it.
Well, the merchant panicked. He cried out that without the scale, there's no commerce, there's no value, there's no meaning to our work at all. And in response, the Baron just calmly ordered his gray spirit to show us the true value of our weights. The silent creature reached out this dark, leather-gloved hand and lightly touched the central pivot of the golden scale. And a single drop of silver quicksilver seeped from its finger straight into the pure gold.
What happened next? The first slugging resumed right in front of our eyes. And you have to understand the sheer speed of this destruction. In just 1 second, the gold didn't melt. No, it unraveled. The very language of its form was just erased. In 2 seconds, the balance beams turned to dust. And by the 3rd second, the pans totally collapsed into gray powder, and our precious silver and grain mixed seamlessly with the worthless dirt on the ground. Our ultimate symbol of commerce and divine value, it just ceased to exist.
We all cried out in absolute horror. I mean, people were screaming that he had destroyed our truth. We begged him, how will we ever know what anything is worth again? But the Baron just looked down at the weeping merchant. His eyes were as cold and dead as that anti-light star he had summoned back at 3 a.m. And he actually mocked our grief. He just looked at us and said, "You weep for a broken toy." He then left us with this final, truly terrifying arithmetic. He told us that man is simply an animal, absolutely terrified of his own weightlessness. He said that because we fear the void so much, we build these cages of gold and falsely call them metrics of the soul. Value, he argued, is really just a ghost. It's a ghost we chase so we don't have to look down into the dark abyss right beneath our feet. He told us to just stand in the dirt, look at our empty hands, and learn that true freedom only comes when you subtract everything from nothing.
And with that, they just turned and walked back into the fog. They left us sitting there in the dirt, unable to buy, unable to sell, and honestly unable to ever believe in our constructed reality ever again. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with the exact same haunting question that is still echoing in our empty marketplace. Look at the structures you've built to give your own life meaning. Think about them. When your golden scales turn to ash, what will you weigh?